visually recorded and streamed live. A link is available on the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council website to the YouTube platform, where the public can view the meeting live and watch recordings of previous council meetings. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and Regulation 33, these video audio files will be retained by Council for at least 6 months and made available for viewing live as well as online within 5 days of the scheduled meeting. The written minutes of a meeting, once confirmed, prevail over the video audio recording of the meeting. I welcome councillors, staff and members of the public and declare the meeting on this day, the 26th of February 2019, open at 5:02 p.m. 1.1. The Glamorgan Spring Bay Council acknowledges the traditional owners of our region and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Present. All councillors are present. In attendance we've got Mr David Metcalf, our General Manager, and Ms Turvey, Executive Officer, and Mr Wells, Manager of Planning. Declaration of interest or conflict. I request elected members to indicate whether they have 1. Any interest personally or via a close associate as defined in section 49 of the Local Government Act 1993, or any conflict as described in Council's Code of Conduct for councillors in any item included in the agenda.
No.
I have conflict in relation to 2 items. One is a planning authority item in relation to Road DA 19017. I'll be vacating the room, I presume. And I also have a conflict of interest, maybe, with the report from the Swansea Courthouse Management Committee annual report, of which I'm a member of the, I'm a chair of that committee.
Oh, number 9. Thank you. Any further? No. So we have up on screen we have a late agenda item that's been provided to you by Deputy Mayor Woods.
So I'll move if that's okay, Mayor.
I've just got a question before we do that. Just asking, is this matter urgent? It's just that in the meeting procedures for a late item agenda, it was here a moment ago, that the matter, the General Manager...
8.6, number 6.
Yeah. 8.6, the General Manager reported that the matter is urgent to be a late agenda item.
Oh, well, I consider it to be urgent. It's with regards to community safety, so I consider the agenda item to be urgent.
Yeah, no, this is General Manager.
Yes, I do, because it's it was rejected by Dyer outright, and it is a safety issue. So.
Yeah, sorry. Now, yeah, you're right. Now, thank you.
So can I move? I will move that Council accepts the late item agenda relating to Bishno speed limits as item number 8.3 in notices of motion.
A second.
So it's open for...
It goes. Then it's to be, if I may, Mayor.
Yeah.
It's to be it's to be voted on whether it's accepted now, and then there's discussion later at the time of when it comes up in.
So you're saying we cannot discuss whether or not we accept now because that's what it's a late item agenda, so it's consideration, and yeah. I just have a question. We've got here that it says 1 kilometre extension to the 80 kilometre Rosedale Road. Are you suggesting it goes to 60 kilometres an hour or 80?
Mayor, you're really only dealing with whether you accept the late agenda item.
Yeah,
or
I'm
not,
just a bit
not,
confused about it because it's got different numbers in there.
That needs to be debated in 8.3 though, Mayor.
Councillors, you happy for any questions in respect to the late agenda item? Or you're happy to put it on and, oh, dear, it's horrible, sorry. Put it on and then discuss it at the right time?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so all those in
Yeah.
favour?
Yeah, long as we have a discussion period, that's the most important.
Yeah, carried. Thank you. Unanimous. Okay, 2.1, ordinary meeting of council. Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on Tuesday, the 22nd of January 2019 be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Somebody to second that? Councillor Breeny. Any discussion? I'll move the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimous. Special meeting of council, 2.2, a motion please.
I move that the minutes of the special meeting of council held Monday 18th of February at 6:30 p.m. be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Somebody to second that motion? Councillor Churchill. Any discussion? Move the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimous. The workshop held January 22nd, item 2.3. The council notes this information. No comment? Good. Moving on to 2.4. Workshop held February the 12th, 2019. Again, this is that council notes the information. I would like to have it put in there though that this was a very long day meeting. It started at 11:30 with the workshop finishing at 5. And then on to a further to Peewee meeting from 5:30 to 7:30. I think it's important there to show that different people attended different events for different reasons. And one was a car mishap on the way. So I think it's important that we have the who was there. So if any questions come up going forward. So I would like to see that amended that Councillor Wisby, Breeny, Browning, Churchill and Pike attended from 11:30 to 5 p.m. Deputy Mayor Woods and Councillor Arnold 12 to 1, and in attendance the General Manager 4 to 5 p.m. and Councillor Simons was an apology. Any issue with those amendments? Okay, so Council notes this information. Do you want to get into you again? So that was Councillors Wisby, Breeny, Browning, Churchill and Pike. $11:30 to 5. And Deputy Mayor Woods and Councillor Arnold 12 to 1. And the General Manager was 4 to 5. Thank you. Okay, item 3, Planning Authority section. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures, Regulation 2005, I hereby declare that the Council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 3 of the agenda. Have a motion, please.
I'll move that council now acts as a planning authority.
Somebody to second that motion, please. Councillor Simons. All those in favour? Unanimous. Item 3.1, DA 18259, visitor accommodation 5 Esplanade East, Coles Bay. We're on page 12 and the recommendation starts on page 24. And could I have a motion, please?
Thank you. I will move pursuant to Section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015 that the application for visitor accommodation DA 2018/0259 at 5 Esplanade East, Coles Bay, CT 1678404/2 be approved subject to the following conditions 1 through to 18.
And somebody to second that motion, please. Councillor Churchill. Open for discussion.
I would like to just make
Councillor Pike.
one comment. I read there, somewhere in the report, I don't exactly know what page, I think it was 31, they had the floor area, total floor area at 70 square metres, but with the verandas it was 90 square metres.
I don't, Councillor Pike, I don't think that actually, I'm not sure that comes into floor area, but you could ask that question to the planner.
You
for
through
sure.
you, Mayor, Mr Wells.
Through the mayor, no, verandas don't count towards floor area. The blinders measured by the external walls of the building.
So the external walls are out to the edge of the veranda, Mr Wells, on the plan, floor plan.
Not external walls, no.
Am I reading the, am I looking at the wrong photo? Oh, so that doesn't count as a floor plan. Rightio, thank you. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Any,
Yes,
any,
through you, Mayor. On page 25, parking and access, condition 7. Prior to the commencement of use, at least one car parking space. You could just take that into account. And at number 11, again, prior to use of the building, issue of the building permit, a detailed car parking plan prepared. And if satisfactory, the car parking plan will be endorsed and will form part of the permit. On completion of works in the car parking plan and prior to the commencement of use, a practising civil engineer will provide a certification to council stating that the works have been constructed in accordance with endorsed drawings and specified specifications approved by council. I just needed clarification. In the past, my experience is that when a development application comes in and it is lacking information, for example, a parking plan or a wastewater management plan or a bushfire management plan, etc., subject to the approval of the applicants, council would ask for or would request further information, and the time clock would stop on that development until such time as the information that was requested by council's planners was received and checked to see that it was the information that was requested, and then the clock restarted. What that meant was that the development application was assessed based on all of the information being brought together and being assessed as a finished item. In other words, the conditions would be, instead of upon completion of works, a practising civil engineer must provide certification, the condition might read something like the car parking plan will be constructed in accordance with the certified plan. Has that situation changed, and is that option available to us so that we are not placing any more stress on compliance issues where we would have a compliance officer have to go out and check that all of these things have been done after the fact, after the works are done, rather than at the time of issuing of the permit? Is that option still open to us? And if it is, why aren't we using it? If it's not, then I understand why.
Through the Mayor, in this case, the level of information shown on the plans was considered adequate for public notification and assessment purposes. It's a large block and only one car parking space is required, so it's quite easily to do. Whether your concern with this condition and subsequent follow-on and compliance checking is no real... I don't quite see the issue. If we did have a plan before us that did show that one car parking space, someone would still need to go and check it. So we're just saying that they'll need, before you build it, give us a plan of where that one space will be, just so we can double check it and make sure that the stormwater drainage is picked up. There's still the check of it to do.
So
whether it's here now or deferred till later.
okay, through you, Mayor. So it's not expedient to ask for that location at the time you're assessing the development?
In the second sense of this case, I didn't think it was necessary.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Councillor Churchill.
Through you, Mayor, could I ask the planning officer, I know it's a bit of an aside, but the issues, under the issues, page 23, it says traffic generated by Freycinet Rentals office at the rear of the land, of the subject land, as the issue, and the response is basically it's unclear at this point whether there is a planning permit for this building to be used as an office. This is a compliance matter that should be investigated separately from this application currently before council. How is that that investigation triggered, or does it come naturally out of this proposal, or what's the story?
Through the Mayor, yes, we'll follow up. The consultant's been to the site, I've been to the site. We just need to make contact with the owner and discuss the details. The type of activity that they may be running, which is a form of, would look like a form of a home-based business, may actually be exempt under the planning scheme, but we'll clarify that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Item 3.2, DA 18261, change of use to visitor accommodation, 1130 Dolphin Sands Road, Dolphin Sands. Starts on page 36, and the recommendation is on page 63 through to 67. Remembering there's two parts to the recommendation, being A and B. Could I have somebody to move the motion?
Pursuant to Section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, that the one single ground-based sign at the entrance, 2 platforms E1, E2, E3 and E6 in accordance with Plan A, DA 18/0261. 3 on-site wastewater systems including the composting toilet subject to upgrade. 4 use of visitor accommodation as follows. A, accommodation for up to 8 people in 4 tents located on timber platforms in the approved locations, and B, up to 2 staff members on the site at any one time. 5, use of the existing building as part of visitor accommodation. It is office, shed, kitchen, gathering space for guests staying in the tents. This does not include any additional visitor accommodation beds within the existing building. And 6, improvement on the on-site wastewater and stormwater management. As detailed in DA 18/0261 at 1130 Dolphin Sands Road, Dolphin Sands, CT 54666/175, be approved, subject to conditions 1 to 31.
Want somebody to second that? Yes. Councillor Brenny. Open to discussion.
Are we going to vote on this separately, or are we going to vote on the recommendation B as well, which is the refusal section?
Councillor Arnold?
It needs to be done separately because it's 2 separate parts.
I just asked the General Manager that exact question because I just thought it sort of maybe does depend if everybody is in agreement with A and B, or there could be a different. So are you, Mr. Wells, there's no reason we can't split these? No. Okay, so would you like to move the first part that you've just read? Or would you like to just split, or say split them now? What would you like to do?
Oh, I assumed that we were only moving them that we were moving separately because you made the statement that
there's
to
two
bear in
parts.
mind that there were two parts to it.
So you only read A?
I made an assumption.
Yeah.
Yes, I
Okay.
did only read A.
Okay, I wasn't watching what you were reading.
Is longer.
B is longer. Okay,
Yes.
so we're only moving A, and Councillor Breeny has seconded A, so we're open for discussion on Part A.
Seconder. Did you ask for that?
Councillor Arnold and Councillor Breeny have sorted that already, so Councillor Breeny, have you got questions?
No questions, no, but I do have a comment.
Right.
I would like to congratulate the planning department, the author and the advice. This is one of the most convoluted development applications I've seen in my 30 years in local government. And to have it explained in the way that it was, as succinctly and as clearly as this, so that somebody who knew about planning issues could understand it without too much trouble, was quite an achievement, and I thank them.
Councillor Pike.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually would like to echo, if I can, those same sentiments. I was, my very first time, I thought this was a fabulous presentation. I do have a question, though, through you to the
Councillor Pike, before you ask it, would you like to move your speaker? Thank you, Councillor Browning. You're echoing in the room.
Apologise.
No, that's
I was
okay.
trying to whisper to
Okay.
May I just? Yes.
Sure.
There's just one question I wanted to ask you. Thanks, Mr. Mr. Wells. On page 38, I'm going to take you back here because I noticed, I read through this, that it hadn't been approved and it was only brought to the attention of Council in July in 2018 through a written complaint. I was just wondering where that action was up to now, currently, from July last year. What's happened? What did we do in that first 12 months?
Through the mayor, upon the complainant making council staff aware of it, we contacted the owner of the property and advised them of their need to obtain approvals, and we've since then worked through this to get to what we have now as an application.
Thank you very much. Terrific.
Councillor Churchill.
Yes, through the Mayor, could I also just ask, the existing main building on this property, has it previously been permitted for use?
Through the mayor, it was approved as an outbuilding.
Right, so not as a dwelling or a residence. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brady.
Just a clarification too, on page 58. Under referrals, it states Council's Biodiversity Officer 10.1, 10.11, the proposal was referred to Council's engineering consultant. That should read Biodiversity Officer.
Okay. Any further comment or discussion? I will put the motion which refers to Part A, just to be clear. All those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you. And could I have somebody to move the motion Part B, please? Councillor Arnold.
Part B, pursuant to Section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, that the development of two existing visitor accommodation platforms, E4 and E5, the provision of one additional platform, P1, for visiting accommodation, and additional expansion of the visitor accommodation use to include the accommodation of another two people in one tent, as detailed in DA 18/0261 at 1130 Dolphin Sands Road, Dolphin Sands, CT 54666175, shown in Plan B, DA 18/0261, be refused on the grounds listed 1 to 4.
Somebody to second that motion. Deputy Mayor Woods. Open for discussion. No discussion. I'll move the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Three point three, Councillor Breen, is this you? Yes. Councillor Breeny's leaving the room now. Councillor Breen, would you like to shut the door when you go out, please? Thank you. Item 3.3 DA 19017, outbuilding, change of use to visitor accommodation, 69 Old Spring Bay Road, Swansea. Could I have a motion, please?
Yes, what page is that on?
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, I forgot to remind. On page, recommendation starts on page 117. Deputy Mayor Woods.
I move that pursuant to Section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, that the application for changes of use and new outbuildings, visitor accommodation, residential use and associated outbuilding, DA 2019/177 at 69 Old Spring Bay Road, Swansea, CT 5824/6 be approved, subject to the following conditions 1 through to 27.
Somebody to second that motion. Councillor Churchill. Open for discussion. Councillor Churchill, are you looking for something?
Yes,
Oh, okay. Yeah, Deputy Mayor Woods first.
Just a question. If anyone else has got one, I've got to find it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Churchill.
Just a question here of a bit of inconsistency. It says on page 109, a bottom box right-hand side, number 4, the outbuilding is set back 21.5 metres from the northern boundary and 44 metres from the western boundary. And if we go over to the next page, 110, it says the important part is that the setback is 50 metres from the western boundary. Is that right? Is that what I'm reading correctly or not? Yeah, no, actually it's the next page over as well. On page 112, 8.10.4, the proposed non-agricultural use, it says it's set back 50 metres where it's 44 metres here. It may only be a technicality, but it may be significant. Could I ask the planner through you?
Through the Mayor, at 8.10.4, 50 should be deleted and 44
Right.
is the correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Pike.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question through you again. I don't actually know who this one's to, whether it's to you, Mr. Wells, or not. This is rural resource zone, isn't it, this property? It is rural resource. I have difficulty because it states that it is a 50-metre setback. Now we've got a road runs up there which takes up 10 metres of it, or a bit over, and then we've got that building even closer, within 21 metres. So I am having difficulty agreeing to this. So are we going to forego that rural resource zone or the rules around it? Can you help me here, please?
Through the
I think
Mayor,
it would be the western zone.
one of the challenges with the rural resource zone is that it's the most commonly used zone in the municipality, so it will apply to good agricultural land as much as it will apply to areas like this that are previously subdivided, or even probably, I think this is probably an old grant type of lot arrangement, so 3 or 4 hectare size blocks. They don't have the agricultural values
Yes,
what
I-
exists in other parts
yeah.
of the rural resource zone. And look, in terms of the boundary to the north, the 21 metre setback, so that's adjoining general residential zone, so there's no conflict with any agricultural. And the 44 metre zone, look, again, whilst they're rural resource, they're predominantly residential in nature, and if you look at most of the properties around the area, majority of the dwellings don't comply with 50 metre setback.
I noticed that was mentioned on the, I think the properties to the west of that, it doesn't comply. All right, thank you very much for the clarification.
No further comment or questions. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Simons, Pike, Browning, Churchill, Deputy Mayor Woods and myself, and against Councillor Arnold. Motion's carried. Could you advise Councillor Breeny, please, Councillor Simons, come back through?
Excuse me.
Councillor Breeny, that motion was carried as per the recommendation. Moving on to item 3.4, Planning Scheme Amendment and Combined Permit AM 2017/07A, AM 2018/07B and SA 2017/04. Starting on page 133, recommendation is on page 140. Could I have somebody to move a motion, please? Deputy Mayor Woods.
Thank you. I will move that Council resolves that a copy of the representations be forwarded to the Tasmanian Planning Commission, and B, Council resolves that no modifications are necessary to the amendments or to the permit.
Somebody to second. Councillor Arnold, open for discussion.
Am I the only one again?
Councillor
Council, thank you, Mayor. I'm just trying to look for the page of the small, oh, here it is. Thank you. I've got the sticky tape on it. I'll get back. Do we have to, my question, I guess, is to you or the General Manager, do we have to address A and B together here in this recommendation?
No.
That's what Deputy Mayor, or did I misread it?
Oh, yeah, sorry, well, I think they are together through to the planner. They are together. They must be together.
Right.
Council needs to have a position and council must forward it to the Planning Commission. It's as one.
Okay, fine. Thank you. That's a question. Thanks.
Okay, any further questions?
Oh, sorry. Through the Mayor, a question relating to, for example, representation on page 135, the representation 3 to IVET. The question was, lot sizes are generally half the size of the existing lots in the area and do not reflect the intent of those earlier subdivisions. The lots should therefore be increased in size or a village green be created in a riparian reserve. The officer response quite correctly relates to the regional land use strategy and indicates that there's a density of 15, because of Orford being in the general residential zone. It reflects the fact that Orford is serviced by water and sewer. The regional land use strategy seeks a density of 15 dwellings per hectare of land net in order to provide an appropriate level of financial efficiency from urban land and services. That same comment is made on page 137 in relation to the representation by Pearce. It provides for a viable scale to maintain urban services in the long run and recognises that urban land is a scarce resource that must be utilised efficiently. I quite agree with that. The issue that I would like to have clarified is I assume that when it says that Warford is within the general residential zone, I presume this land is in this Warford residential zone. Is it in residentially zoned?
No, through the mayor, the land is currently in the zoned rural resource, but there's an amendment to rezone it to general residential zone.
To general residential. So that means that the lot sizes will be then reduced to a net of 15. Through, yep, go on.
Works out about an 800 square metre lot size on average.
Okay, my mathematics said 660 square metres, but I just simply divided a hectare by 15.
Depends how much land is used for roads and open space and the like.
Wouldn't that reduce the area?
Yes, it would.
Is it possible? Because the reason I brought up this business of the lot size is because all of the most of the representations related directly to the people complaining about the fact that lot sizes are not in keeping with the area and those sorts of things, and it was a serious concern for them. Are we able to present this to the Planning Commission with a recommendation other than that goes to general residential zone, that it goes to a zone where there may be more scope for larger lots?
Through the mayor, there's in this planning template, just a state government document, there's a series of zones that we can choose from. There's a hierarchy. There's the general residential zone, which is the serviced residential. The next lot down the hierarchy is low density residential, which is specifically for unserviced land. So there's nothing really in between. And the low density residential zone is about a 1,500 square metre minimum lot size. If you take our structure plan and the regional land use strategy as a whole, I don't think a low density zone would be supported.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. So if there's a service of water and sewer, then that automatically or it basically dictates the fact that the lots will be of the size that's permitted in a general residential zone. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Wisby, just leading on from Councillor Bruni has made me think a little there. Probably need to. But you've said there, I would like to direct this to the planner, if that's all right.
Sure.
Mr Wells, if we're talking about an average lot size of around 600, 800 or whatever it is, with 15 divisions, right, what sort of percentage of that land area is then given over to the roads or other infrastructure that's going to take up space? So in other words, what would we be expecting for the actual size? Have you got a figure that gives us sort of a percentage of?
I think the general expectation should be, if it's general residential zone and it's a new large subdivision like this involving new roads, that'll roughly be an 800 square metre lot size.
So the lot sizes will be 800 square metres on average?
Roughly, yeah.
Right,
the target of 15 is, somewhere around 700 to 800.
So is that a target or is that an actual allowance? So
in the regional land use strategy, it's expressed as a target. And it's based on some advice from what was Southern Water about, generally their service rate charges, if they have that rough density, then in the long run, they've got sufficient revenue to guarantee that maintenance and upkeep of all their assets. If it's below that, that particular area won't necessarily be paying their way, so to speak, and resources will be diverted from other areas to cover that. So 15's a target.
And they use the word dwelling as opposed to land area or lot size. So do they really mean dwellings, or is it assumed one dwelling per lot?
No, they do mean dwellings, so that's a complicated factor because you might end up with multiple dwellings on some of these lots down the track.
Okay. Thank you for your clarification.
Councillor Pike?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Wells again. Okay, this isn't actually to do with these two lots. It's the next bit of land at the, I guess is it the southern end or the eastern end?
East, yeah.
Eastern end, between these lots and Spring Beach, or at the top of Spring Beach Hill there. Is there still land there to be developed, or is all that sold now? As in, I know there are houses in there on an acre or two. Is that all privately owned now, or is there still vacant land that could be developed in the future?
So just to clarify the area that we're talking about.
Okay, we've got two lots
Yep.
currently here that we're looking at. So then keep going towards Spring Beach, the next on the left-hand side, and then you come up the hill into Spring Beach. That land there, I'm wondering what it's like now. What's it zoned at, and what's this? Is it subdivided, or is it open land that could be subdivided in the future?
In that area,
Yes.
so these two lots plus the next lot to the east, which is the area you're talking
Yes,
about.
that's right.
They're all within our Tribunal offered structure plan as a future urban growth area.
Okay.
This amendment though is just for the first
Two.
So potentially that may happen down the track.
So when that comes along, we could put, because there needs to be a green belt separating that from. Am I allowed to say this?
No, Councillor
I
Pike,
beg
because
your pardon?
no, that's okay. All we're dealing with today is
these two?
the particular
Thank you.
two, so we
Thank you.
can't delve to the others.
Thank you.
Any further comment? So, Mr. Wells, can I just confirm, really council's hands are pretty well tied here. Like, clearly that land one day was going to be subdivided. I don't like the size of the blocks personally. I think that's a lot of blocks for the area, and quite small blocks in comparison to other blocks in the area. So I do agree with those who have made contact, who have those concerns or put in representations. But your answer, like what you gave Councillor Breeny, was basically we only had two options: general residential or low density residential. Yeah. So really, we don't really have much option here, do we? There's no like a medium 1,000.
Through the men up through. No, there's not. The government has a very strict hierarchy in their template, so there's only a limited number of zones to choose from. Their take is it's either serviced or it's not, and
Yep.
that's the zone that applies.
Yeah. Okay, so really, there's no choice here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Next item is 3.5, a mediation refusal of planning application for subdivision at 9 Diamond Waters, Bishano, SA 2018/08. We're on page 141 and the recommendation is on page 143. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Breeny.
Pursuant to Section 17 of the Resource Management and Planning Appeal Tribunal Act 1993, Council agrees to a consent memorandum being endorsed by Council staff that has the effect of approving SA 2018/08 subject to a Part 5 agreement being endorsed that provides for building envelopes as described in the attachments to this report, and B, that the permit include conditions consistent with the following 1 through to 31.
Somebody will second that motion. Councillor Browning, open for discussion. No discussion? Discussion?
Through the Mayor, could I
Councillor
ask the
Simons.
Planning Officer a question just to do with the Part 5 agreement? Are we relying on covenants through the Part 5 agreement on the block? Is that the legal status of it?
Yeah, through the Mayor, that's the applicant's suggested way of resolving the concerns with the original proposal. And by implementing them through the Part 5 agreement, they're much more stringent and reliable than a covenant on a title, which this council has had issues with ensuring compliance with them in the long run. So a Part 5 agreement's a strong approach to it.
Yes, and that Part 5 agreement would be enforced by the council officers? Thank you.
Any further questions? Mr Wells, I have a question. So we had an option here of council confirms its refusal or council consent as per what's been read by or put by Councillor Breeny. So you feel confident that what's the recommendation there for approval, that is sufficient protection for the neighbours and...
Relative to what the planning scheme would otherwise allow. So let's just say the subdivision doesn't happen. They could come in and still apply for multiple dwellings or just one big house to be 8.5 metres high. So the mechanism that they propose is a small envelope with a significantly reduced height. So I think that's a really good outcome and will allow the subdivision to happen without too great an impact on the neighbours.
Okay. Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2005, the chairperson, or I, hereby declare that the Council is no longer acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 for Section 3 of the agenda. Could I have a motion, please?
I move that council no longer acts as a planning authority at 5:50.
Somebody to second that motion, please. Councillor Breeny. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Public question time. Now, our first question is from Viv. Now, we've got a microphone there. Viv Pimlott. Vic Pimlott, close.
Good day. You had a meeting about the tip shop. I heard on the grapevine. I thought it was tonight. I thought we were going to have a decision tonight or something. But as council goes, it takes a while. So could you fill me in on what's going on, please?
Sure. We take a while because we want to do it right.
That's right.
So, I'm just going back to the notes here. On the 12th of February, we attended the Orford Waste Management Centre to have a look there at the size of the land and what would have been proposed there. So I think that was like 4 or 5 councillors went there. Then we had a few things in the meantime. We then headed up to Swansea and had a look at the site there. It was, without extending the lease area, the area is quite small. Mr General Manager, that's correct, isn't it? The current lease area that we were told is quite small unless we increased it to above
To the
top
yes.
of the hill.
Correct.
Yeah, technically, whatever distance that, we're at points, but yeah, unless we go to the top of the hill, don't quote me on those words I just said, Ms Turvey, but to the top side of the Waste Management Centre, unless we increased our lease area there, which is a possibility, the current boundaries there wouldn't be big enough for the tip shop to be there. So after going to that meeting, we then had a workshop. It was a discussion point of the workshop that was after that meeting. Councillor Brenny, myself and Mr O'Leary, the Works Manager, had met maybe the week or so before that to have a look at available land in Swansea. The reason for that was we was looking at possibly some land that would allow for not only a tip shop in Swansea, but hopefully for like a community shed or a men's shed, so that, you know, if we could build a tip shop there, that hopefully one day we could expand on that and we weren't restricted in size too much. So we're sort of taking a longer term, you know, vision on that. So we had a conversation with the General Manager about that, and he was going to further investigate options for possibly increasing the lease area there. Oh, sorry, I'm echoing. Increasing the area there potentially, or potentially other sites if they exist in Swansea. So it's a work in progress, but it is taking that bit longer because we do want to do it properly, and we want to make it probably a bigger project.
It won't take another 7 years, will it?
No, I'm not that patient.
I'll be dead and buried by then.
No, we'll work on that for you. So yeah, no, things are progressing well, and yeah, well, hopefully within the next month we should have something, to talk about.
Right. If the man's shed ever comes into operation, I'll be willing to sort of help out, because I used to run Peace Community Shed down in Bridgewater. I was one of the founder members in Bridgewater, and I used to teach woodwork as well as metalwork. So if you want a hand out with that any time, I'll be available. You know, I can't sort of do any of it. I don't want administration or nothing like that, but I'll help with the actual woodwork and the metalwork.
Right. So the other thing too, just to finish off there, Vic, is I think council would be looking at making it. It would be a community-run, project, as in once it's constructed. And I also had a meeting with Minister Barnett, Guy Barnett, and he was very interested in assisting to look for some funding for like the community men's shed type thing. So things are progressing well.
What have we got in the kitty? 60 grand, isn't it?
Oh, something like that. It's on the agenda. 50. It might be 50. Yeah. So, but hopefully, I like to double the money, and hopefully we can get some grant funding and kick it along.
That'll be good.
So we'll come back to you.
Yeah, lovely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Sue O'Rourke, would you like to take the microphone, Sue? Give us a little song if you like.
Thank you. So I have two questions tonight. Question one is, at a council meeting late last year, I asked for yellow lines to be placed on all four corners of Vickery and Charles Street, Tribunna. No parking signs were placed on one corner, for which I thank the council, but people are still parking there, and point in order was tonight as I drove down, there was a car parked on the no parking sign, and there was lots of other free parking. So maybe people can't read, I don't know. Maybe they don't know what symbols are. So I'm wondering if yellow lines could again be considered, especially on the no parking zone. And the second part of that question is...
Sue, could I just ask the General Manager to respond to that first bit, please?
Yes, through you, Mayor. I thought there was yellow lines there. When I
no, not on the corners of yellow lines were put on the corners of the Esplanade from Charles Street and around near Kim Keen's corner. But there's no actual yellow lines on any of those corners in Vickery Street.
Right. Okay. No worries.
It's just that people are continually parking there, and it's very hard as you're coming out to be able. You've got to come out, creep out quite a fair way, and as I said originally, it could result in a very nasty accident or even death. So the second part is I feel that, again, a nasty accident is waiting to happen on Kim Keen's corner along the Esplanade. Could or would the council consider making that corner one way with a no entry sign to be placed near Mrs Keen's driveway, diverting all traffic coming along the Esplanade from Charles Street being diverted down onto the marina, which is already a one-way area. Traffic coming from Vickery Street along past the tennis courts towards the Esplanade would continue to be two-way, whereby they could either continue along the Esplanade towards Charles Street or enter the marina via the one-way entrance. So it's a very, very narrow, yes. So I've got, yeah.
Through you, Mayor, we're certainly looking at that because we were looking at one-way options to do with parking.
Yep.
So we were trying to get more parking in there, and we were looking at that Esplanade being one way, so we could get end on end or whatever they call it, diagonal parking in there. So that's what we were looking at. So we are working on it.
That is terrific because some people come around that corner very fast.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
I've certainly witnessed it myself. So.
Okay. So my second question is to you, Mayor Wisby. You may be aware that I've been attending most council meetings over the past few years. So I was rather surprised and a little, and maybe a lot confused, when at the January meeting during questions without notice, an interaction occurred between some councillors and a member of the public gallery. This interjection occurred without the person being invited to speak. How and why was this allowed to occur without a point of order being called? Please correct me if I'm wrong, or are there now new rules?
I've got no idea. Can anyone help me on?
If I may, Mayor, I think that was that. Can I ask Mrs. O'Rourke a question? That was the question with regards to the airstrip at Cambria Green.
Correct. And the person spoke from the floor without actually being invited to speak.
Yeah. Well, that's my choice. Like, I chair the meeting, and if another councillor calls a point of order, I make the decision. So that's my call.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll give these.
So now it goes to Steve. Oh, sorry, Mr. Barrett.
My question is to the Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Council on the discussion and the brave decisions made last week in several matters which have been of considerable concern to the community. So well done. My question is, what has happened to the Integrity Commission's report concerning the General Manager, and will the Council be considering this?
Thanks, Mr. Barrett. The report that was received by then Mayor Kent has now been provided, or was provided to me by the Integrity Commission, and Council will be considering that report at a special meeting on Monday. Thank you. So that's it for public question time. Okay, now we're on to information reports, page 152 to 185.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Arnold?
Mayor, I have a question in relation, and it probably needs to be addressed to the Works Manager. On page 169, there is a comment that says...
Sorry, can I just ask the Works Manager to come forward? Mr. Pollard, would you like to come forward and answer this if you're here in capacity of work or not?
He's
public. Okay, so to the General Manager.
General Manager then. Wellington Road between Rebben Road and Earlham Road is being resheeted due to surface material ravelling, causing safety concerns for road users. I don't understand the word ravelling in this context. Could it please be explained?
Through you, Mayor, means the bigger material is coming to the surface rather than staying down, and the finer crushed material on the top is disappearing off to the side, and the larger material is coming up.
And
So-
if I may, Madam Mayor, my apologies to the Works Manager. I wasn't aware that he was here in a private capacity.
Councillor Bruni?
Through you, Mayor, to the, David, sorry, General Manager. I wasn't aware of this, and does that mean that the gravelling has failed?
Well, whether it's the gravel, that's what an engineer is looking at the moment to see whether we got any comeback on certain things. So that's what we're investigating at the moment.
So the material supplied is being checked. Okay.
It was laid correctly, all that type of stuff. So.
Through the Mayor, how much of the road's involved?
Don't quote me on it, Mayor, but I believe it's about 5 or 6K.
Thank you.
Thank you. With regard, on page 168, with regards to the last dot point on the page, the entrance signage for the 10-minute track at Orford has been removed. The popular walking track runs between Rebben Road and the beach. The land is owned and managed by Crown Land Services and has become a high risk to walkers due to creek erosion and unsafe trees. The removal of the signage removes council from any liability. Crown is fully aware of the situation. So my question is, I mean, it's written here in black and white, but I just would like further confirmation that there is no liability to council with regards to that working track anymore. Walking track.
Through you, Mayor, it's correct.
Thank you. It's a shame. No, it's a shame that track has become what it has become through weather and erosion, yes.
Sorry, I'm laughing, Councillor.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions. So I had the question on the ravelling, but you've answered that it's being investigated because it's just been done, and it sounds like an extremely costly exercise. So you'll report back to council on the outcome of that expenditure.
I will, Mayor, but the project at this stage is still under budget, so if there's a cost incurred, it will still be within budget. Now, whether we recover that cost, I don't know at this time. So.
Okay, and another point was Crown Land. This is on page 184, and it's the manager of Natural Resource Management. It's about the working group to be established through the draft master plan for the Orford Bird Sanctuary and surrounds. The Crown Land leases for the greater area are in train, and it is proposed to hold a workshop with the new council to discuss all of this prior to finalisation. What finalisation? Because we did see a plan that included a big area of the beach area, which is sort of what's now fenced off from memory, potentially changing from recreational area through, the sort of overlay of lease to being more bird protected, no people area.
Yep.
Is that still going on to formalise that?
Through you, Mayor, yes, there is a working group to do that, and it would come back to council for endorsement and approval for the lease boundaries at that time, because as you know, under the Act, we can't lease or licence any land without the approval of council. So.
Yeah, but the actual changing of that land as it is currently, that work will be done and then it'll come to council, not that council would approve that work to be done before it's done.
The working group will make those recommendations. The working group will be Parks, Council, Community.
Oh, the working group that hasn't been formed yet?
Correct, because of the fires.
Yep.
That's why it hasn't been formed.
Okay, sorry, I just was getting confused between, you know what I mean, what's already been done,
Yep. Oh,
but
yes.
it's being held over to the new working group
Correct.
to consider. Thank you. And my other question is in respect to medical services and page 161, and
Yep.
the significant difference in the operating profit year to date versus
Yep.
budget. So you're confident that that's going to come into line shortly?
Through you, Mayor, yes, I am. What happens is that I had in the January budget that we'd receive the what's called the PNICP and the PIPs, and they came in February. So
Okay, so that'll sort out next month.
correct.
Okay, any further questions on that section? No? The recommendation there is that the management reports are received and noted. There's no section 24 committee minutes. And 7.1, increase in audit fees. Could I have a recommendation, please? Councillor Arnold.
Madam Mayor, I've moved that council authorises the increase of 10% per sitting for Mr Mike Derbyshire, the Chair, and Mr Kane Ingham, the independent member of Glamorgan Spring Bay Council's audit panel.
Move to second that motion. Councillor Brenny. Open for discussion. I've got no problem with a 10% increase, but is it clear there that it's a 10% of what? That it's 10% of current sitting fees?
What do I add that? Don't have a problem with that.
Just sort of a little bit.
It's an assumption, I think.
Yeah, so you're happy of current how do you want to add, Councillor Arnold, where do you want to add that?
Well, perhaps it's 10% of the current sitting fees, an increase of 10% of the current sitting fees rather than per sitting fees.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Brenner, you happy with that?
Through you, Mayor, that's fine if they only have 4, but sometimes they have 6, sometimes they have 5. That's why I said per sitting. They get paid per sitting. Under the legislation, they have to have 4, but as you know, this council before has had extra sittings with the audit panel.
If I may, Madam Mayor, the current sitting fee though is an established fee that was established, so
Correct.
Per annum.
per annum, yeah, okay.
No, it was per, sorry,
Meeting.
through you, Mayor, it was per sitting.
I've always been of the view it was per annum. Okay, but so if we could do that, then increase of 10% on the current per sitting fee,
Yeah.
on the current per sitting fee?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Is that,
that
is
makes sense. It does. Councillor Brenner, you happy with that?
Yes.
Yep, okay. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. 7.2, appointment of council audit panel members. Could I have a motion, please?
I move that Council appoints Councillor Robert Churchill and Councillor Cheryl Arnold to the Glamorgan Spring Bay Audit Panel for a set term to be determined by Council.
Madam Mayor, could I ask that the term be for 2 years? Because we have generally reviewed our panel, our audit panel is generally for 4 years.
Can I just have that seconded by someone and then we can ask for an amendment?
Well, I'm just asking before the motion's actually put up there to go through all the hassles of amending it and all
Well,
of
no,
that.
just to ask, would you mind amending it to that's all, you know what I mean?
All right,
Somebody
sure.
second, Councillor Simons, Councillor Arnold, you'd like to 2 years, suggesting
Well,
2 years with the approval
The
of...
only reason I'm suggesting 2 years is because we have, in the past, we've tended to look at our Section 24 committees midstream of a 4-year term. It's generally accepted that audit panel members, though, do serve for the whole 4 years, but I'm thinking 2 years.
Are you happy with
to
that?
have that amended to read
For a set term of 2 years.
that council appoints Councillor Rob Churchill and Councillor Cheryl Arnold to the Glamorgan Spring Bay Audit Panel for a term of 2 years.
Yes. Councillor Simon, you happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Personally, I'd support that. I'd actually had 2 years written in here. That is generally, we thought we did that last council, but we sort of never got around to reviewing it. But the thought was there, and I think that's a good idea. Any further comment? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. 7.3, adoption of amended model code of conduct. Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move that council formally adopt the Local Government Model Code of Conduct Order 2016 as amended from the 26th of December 2018 as the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council Code of Conduct.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Woods. Any comment? Okay. I'll move them. Sorry, all those in favour? I've got a headache. Carried unanimous, thank you. 7.4, nomination for Section 24 Committee. On page 190. Could I have a motion, please? Deputy Mayor Woods.
Thank you. I'll move that council nominates Councillor Keith Pike as a council representative on the Buckland Hall Committee and the Tribunna Recreation Ground Advisory Committee.
Somebody to second. Councillor Churchill. Open for discussion. No. The only thing here is it says that council can have a maximum of 2 people on, no more than 2 councillors will be elected to a Section 24 committee. On those 2 committees, there's only 1 councillor on each at the moment. So Councillor Pike would make up the number 2. So there's no problem there. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
I vote for myself.
Unanimous.
No, that's good.
Okay, 7.5, Code of Conduct Panel Determination Report. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor
Council
Arnold.
receives and notes the determination report made the 23rd of December 2018 in relation to the complaint by Mr Peter McGlone against Councillor, former and late Mayor Michael Kent.
Yes, former and late.
Somebody to second that motion? Councillor Browning. And it's been amended to former and late.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
Yep. Okay, any comment? Put the motion. All those in favour?
Yes.
Unanimous. On to page 7.6. Staff Resourcing Land Use Planning Benchmark Report. The recommendation there is that the report's received, but I have a couple of questions about the report. It says in background, direct comparisons can be difficult as each council has a policy position as to the level of assessment and customer service that is to be provided. Do we have a policy position, Mr General Manager?
Through you, Mayor, what that's talking about is delegations. So other councillors have greater delegations to deal with planning applications, and some councillors have less. That's what it's referring to. So it's hard to compare apples to apples, but I think former Deputy Mayor Arnold would agree that when we did the KPMG report, it was brought up that Glamorgan Spring Bay was one of the higher than Clarence and Sorell in development applications, handling development applications. So it was quite amazing what we actually handle for the staff resources that we have, and I think Mr Wells is just trying to highlight that.
Okay.
And if I may,
It's
Madam Mayor,
only for
I think it's also important to note that because of our coastline, we're very diverse in terms of having to do assessments of planning applications as well. And again, that's restricted by our human resources in that department.
Yeah, so my question was about, I didn't understand what our policy position was because I didn't know we had one, but obviously now I know it's relating to delegations. And I think as a council it would be prudent to workshop this matter. It's because this report's sort of highlighting that we've got a large level of workload. From a risk perspective, I think now we've been advised, you know, I hadn't seen this particular document from memory. It also talks about the fact that in the current budget, statutory planning receives $142,000 of the general rate, and we've only got 0.96 of a full-time equivalent graduate planner in that position. But I do note that in January, 4 of the 5 reports that we received were from consultant planners, Teresia Williams maybe, and February 2 of the 3 were from a consultant planner also. So, as the gentleman just said, it's hard to do apples and apples, but I think as a council we need to make sure that we've got sufficient staff and staff resources to, that we're not overloading our staff. That's our responsibility to ensure that, in respect to the amount of money we, you know, allocate in budget. So I just think it's a bit of an alarm bell. Well, it was to me personally, that I think we need to further discuss it in a workshop.
If I may, Madam Mayor, well, it's not just in a workshop. I think it's something that we need to look at in when we start doing our budgeting
Absolutely.
process. So it can form part of the budget workshop in the big scheme of things.
Through you, Madam Mayor, in my experience with working here in the planning department, I think on an average it was of the order that we see here, 300 applications, DAs. It's sort of around the figure, maybe not 300, 250, 280, up to 300 sometimes, is the number of DAs we've had here quite consistently every year. Given that over the last 5 to whatever years, the planning statutory situation has been dramatic and dynamic, a lot of the time of the staff is taken up in understanding and introducing and getting it through to people like us. The new planning regulations, the new interim planning schemes, the local area plans, etc., etc. There's definitely an increased workload. I'm just wondering if there has to be a change in the makeup of the department, in that there's a lot of time set aside for this statutory stuff, because that's what we look at. We look at discrimination. Discrimination. Yeah. We look at the more intricate and more difficult development applications, whereas the office itself has got hundreds of others that are being dealt with on a daily basis. I believe the staff levels need to definitely reflect the amount of effort, the amount of work that's being done and has to be done to give a good outcome for the municipality. So if there is any move to look at and shore up staffing levels, and with regard to this sort of a benchmark report, then I'll be supporting it wholeheartedly.
Madam Mayor, I know I've spoken a couple of times on this matter, but with your permission, could I make another comment? There's probably another option here too, and that would be a regional planning authority that council could consider, similar to the planning committees that the bigger councils have. But our neighbouring councils have similar problems to what we have. So why not investigate the potential for a regional planning authority between our neighbours and ourselves, which would be dealt with, so planning matters would then be dealt with in a separate meeting, if you like. So it's an option.
I think probably maybe somebody would like to move a motion to actually investigate and workshop options, rather than just within a budget. I think this actually, I actually think this deserves and needs, for record purposes, acknowledgement that we're taking this seriously, not just we receive a report. I think this identifies risk, and I think that actually needs a motion that we are committed to working with the General Manager to come up with, you know, whatever solutions needed to support staff and ensure that the work can be done.
They were very good words, Madam Mayor, and I'd be very happy to move them.
Oh, what were
if
they?
you'd like to repeat them.
It was, what was it? Well, that we
Workshop.
We workshop.
I would move that we workshop the matter in relation to the issues around planning, and that council is taking the concerns of our planning staff seriously.
Workshop the options, I think, was the word you used.
Yeah, just for council's information, we've had an ad for a planner up for 6 months and had no response.
Yes.
So it's not just a matter of finding people, it's you can't get them.
Yeah. Somebody second that motion?
I'll second
Councillor
the motion.
Churchill. All those in favour? Unanimous. Get the motion. What was the motion?
I think that the matter in relation to the issue around planning be workshopped, and that the council is taking the issues raised by planning staff very seriously.
Madam Mayor, just before we move on, on that issue, probably should have put this before the motion anyway, not that it'll change anything. It's just back on page 171 of the Manager Development and Compliance report. At statutory planning at the bottom, or second from the bottom, it says the planning department consists of one permanent part-time planning administrative officer and one by 0.95 full-time graduate planner, and other resources as required. I think I read that correctly.
Yeah.
But the stat used for that column graph on page 199 is only putting us in there at 0.96 full-time equivalents. So
We'll work through that in the workshop.
it just doesn't. It just doesn't quite add.
It's mathematical.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go, if you're happy, go on to 7.7, pop-up bookstall, pubs. Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move that council approves a grant of $294 to the pop-up bookstall for the purchase of 6 blow mould trestle tables.
Somebody to second that motion. Councillor Pike. Any discussion? Councillor Greenie.
I will be supporting this motion, but it's something that people need to be made aware of, and maybe it could be explained through you, Mayor, to the General Manager. One of the things that really struck me was the pop-up bookstore is obviously a great community asset because it's raised a total of $34,156 and all of it goes back into the community. I find it's almost sort of, have they missed out a zero or something on their application for $294 for the purchase of 6 blow mould tables? It's quite amazing that they're able to raise that amount of money. It's really excellent.
Any further comment? I'd like to take this opportunity to say, on behalf of council, give thanks to the people involved in the pop-up bookstall. They do an amazing job. They've just set up down at the old council chambers, which I think we still own at this very moment, but have an arrangement with the potential new owner and over the next 12 months or so. And the work they do is excellent, and their commitment to community is truly significant. So clearly I'll be supporting the motion, but also would just like to thank all the people involved. Okay, so yes.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could please just make comment on the level of information that we received with regards to this application. I'd like to thank the pop-up bookstall for providing us with that information.
Okay, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, item 8.1, increase time for agenda to council laws from 4 days to 7 days. This is Councillor Churchill.
I have a motion, Madam Mayor. In light of the report provided to council in this agenda item, item 7.6, staff resourcing land use planning benchmark report, council defer item 8.1, increase time for agenda to councillors from 4 days to 7 days to a workshop as soon as possible.
Okay, would you like to hand that motion over to Ms Turvey so she can type it, put it up, and somebody may wish to second that motion? Councillor Brini wishes to second that motion, but if we can just wait for that to come up so you can see what the motion is. Basically, it's deferring it to a workshop in light of the other matter that we are also going to workshop. Is that up? Thank you. Any comment? No? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? That is Councillor Simons, Pike, Browning, Churchill. Oh, unanimous. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. It was hiding. Unanimous. Moving on. Road naming. 8.2. Councillor Simons, your motion, please.
Madam Mayor, I move that council overturns its decision 11/19 made at its January 22nd, 2019 meeting by absolute majority, that council approves the naming of the road reserve as Alexander Way, and 3, that the Nomenclature Board and all other relevant authorities be advised of council's decision and council's records be updated.
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Is that going to be 3 separate? It can't be done as one?
I'd be happy to take your advice on that, Madam Mayor.
Well, we can't just say, well, unless it's all yes, but would you like to do them separately? I would suggest so, because to rescind and...
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Arnold, you happy with that? Okay, open for discussion.
Is that, sorry, Madam Mayor, is that through, is that...
It's 3 separates.
Yeah, so we're discussing number
sorry,
one?
discussing, sorry, I can't say the word discussing. Yes, discussing item number 1. Okay, I can start on that because in this report I've been quoted, and I think it's inferring that of course confusion. I've researched this again, as I did in the first time around. I've contacted the Nomenclature Board again, as I did the first time around. I've printed off the website and confirmed verbally again today. The board is not responsible for naming urban streets situated within proclaimed cities or towns. This is the responsibility of the relevant local government authority, being the council. However, when a new urban street is assigned, the council is bound to notify the Nomenclature Board of that assignment within 40 days. Council are bound by the same rules as the board when making decisions regarding the assignment of names to streets within proclaimed towns. So what are those rules? The source of place names may originate from, but is not limited to, family history. And it says there, note, for example, Salamanca Place is named after the Battle of Salamanca on the 22nd of July 1812 in Spain. The name was brought to Van Diemen's Land by the soldier that it served in that war. So that's the significance of family history. It also says that place names commemorating living persons will only be assigned in exceptional circumstances and after due process with appropriate consultant. So I ask, what is due process with appropriate consultation? I asked what that actually meant of the Nomenclature Board today. And that said, that would be discussions with groups in the area and consultation with council in respect to why this name was so important. And I give you the example of the battle in Spain in 1812. It also says written permission of the family is required for the assignment of a place name for commemorative purposes where the proponent is not an immediate relative. It says if the proposal doesn't comply with these guidelines, it is unlikely to be successful. It says notification from councils to the board of the assignment or alteration of the place name of a street under section 20 of the Act must be supported by a reference to council minutes. So there is a big process there and we need to comply with their rules. So place naming, that's our decision. Street naming, sorry, is our decision within our town boundary, but we need to comply with the rules as written. So it doesn't actually relate to, so I was asking the question on this matter and I emailed the General Manager, and when I was advised that road names are usually put forward by the developers in recognition of family or something personal. And Councillor Simons, you advised that I think more roads should be named after builders. Not sure what the issue is. So the issue is we need to stick to the rules. And what I actually put in the first place, I've confirmed that it is correct. Confirmed that it was all there for anyone to see on the website, and I won't be supporting to rescind this motion.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to take all that on board, that's fine. I believe, though, we've probably made this decision in haste, and in a sense we've actually blindsided the developer. Historically, what has happened is the developer has proposed a name and the council has gone and approved that as part of the course. I think we need to develop perhaps a pro forma that perhaps the developers understand what they've got to do in the future, but not necessarily so with the decision we made at the last meeting.
Okay, so Councillor Brenny?
As you may be aware, Councillor Simons, I worked in the planning department here for about 10 years. One of the duties of the planning department was to monitor and recommend to the nomenclature board names for subdivisions and for roads, etc. And to give you an example of what used to happen, and I assume that the rules are the same because they sound the same, the requirement to avoid any living name was jealously guarded by the nomenclature board. They did not like to use names of living persons, and they were arguably the same ilk, dealing with family names. Now, there have been suggestions that family names, for example, Bailey, regarding Bailey Courts or whatever it is, and some other names, referred to family names, and that was justification for utilising the Alexander name in the original case. I can assure you that the Bailey name was nothing to do with the family. It was to do with a specific individual who was posthumous at the time. And it seemed to me that the Nomenclature Board, well, it was well aware of me, to me, that the Nomenclature Board would not accept a living person's name. They just would not do it because they required quite an amount of information as to the reasons why we would do that sort of thing when there were other options. For example, I was asked, and you passed the street on the way here today. It's Fen Lane up in Cherry Tree Hill. The developer who owned the property, the name was Fen Smith. They requested that because it only went to their properties, a property owned by the sister and by deceased John and Joe Fen Smith, that it was pretty obvious that that's what it should have been named. That was put forward, and the Nomenclature Board and Council did not support it and notified the people involved. However, they did support the name Fen. Fen was a historic and a settled name. Turns out to be quite a character, but they were quite happy to use that name because of the fact that it was posthumous, and it was historical, and it was in relation to local people, etc. The fact that they were not happy with the name Fen Smith goes directly to this. It's a family name, and they didn't want to use it. Now, I won't be supporting this because I was the person who had to go and tell a lot of people that they unfortunately couldn't use their family name in their street name. For example, again, in Swansea, off St Margaret's Court, the developer who was developing that would really dearly have loved to have had his granddaughter's name used in the road. It was made clear to him by both the Nomenclature Board and Council that that wouldn't be on. It turns out that the name that was used was a random name, but it turned out to be satisfactory to him because it related to something to do with his family, but it had nothing to do with a living person. So I'm aware that the utilisation of this name for this subdivision based on the fact that it contains houses built by a builder in that street, I can't support that because of my history of having to tell people otherwise in the past. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Pike.
Through you, Madam Mayor, can I just ask the General Manager, just on page 206, the General Manager states the Council approves the name put forward by the developer, and Council would normally have input into the name. I understand that bit. He also notes, or General Manager goes on to note, that the Nomenclature Board had no problems with it in the past. So the thing is, we didn't do it right then, obviously. When did these rules come in? That's what so that's what I want to inquire about first.
Through the Mayor, I'm not sure the rules that the Mayor read out are actually the rules that are applied to that, but I mean it's stretching the rules what's being read out now. In the 12 years that I've been here, the Nomenclature Board has accepted every name that we put up. And Councillor Breeny's correct in what he says in Swansea, but that was a duplicate name. That's why we couldn't use that. And I've provided, I think it was before your time, Councillor Pryke, I provided to this council a spreadsheet of the last 12 years of names, how they've been arrived at and what they've done, and this council's approved those over 12 years. This is the first one that's been different. So, you know, we can sure, it is Council's decision. There's no disputing that. But Council has always endorsed the developer's name if it was available.
If it was available.
Or the developer's suggested name.
I think you've answered my question.
Okay, Councillor Pike, you know, if there's any question in what I'm reading out, you're free to have a look at it. It's all there.
No, that's totally fine.
It's direct off the website. I'm telling the truth. Okay, it says that we are bound by the same rules as the Nomenclature Board. So, yeah, it's all there for anyone to look up.
I beg your pardon if I made offence.
Oh, no, sorry. No,
thank you. I just hadn't quite finished.
Sorry, Councillor Pike.
It's just that there was a part of the statement by Councillor Simons said if between the General Manager and the Mayor we can find out what is the correct story sometime.
You want it?
Yeah, fine. Then can we workshop this if we need to? We won't discuss it tonight because I believe that we need to get this information to future developers so we don't have this issue raised again.
Yeah, sure.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Arnold?
Oh, I'm completely confused with this whole process. I've been around council for 20 years. And this is the first time it's ever raised its head. We have always supported our developers with place names. Yeah. I take Councillor Brenn's point that there's been times when there's been discussions around it. I fully take that. But you have a look at some of the place names around. I'm quite sure they don't fit the rules. So are we now going to suggest that all those names need to be changed because they haven't fitted the rules for the last 20 years?
Councillor Arnold, I don't think they're here. That's not even on the table that we change other street names. We're dealing with one issue here, and to me, there's only one way to do it, and that's in accordance with the rules. You've got your computer there. You can look it up yourself as to what the rules are, and it's really clear.
Speak to me like that, Madam Mayor. Do not be rude. That was quite disrespectful. What was
Disrespectful? Please explain.
The way you spoke to me then.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. But what I'm saying is that you can look it up yourself and see what the rules are. Council obliged to stick to the rules. We're not talking about the past. We're talking about, if you found that rude, I'm just saying that we're not... The motion we've got in front of us at the moment is this motion. It's been questioned in the lead up to this document here, the background of this document, that council were misinformed. I'm saying if anybody wants to check it, it's got a computer there, that what I'm telling you is the truth, and all this printout here, whichever way it goes, there are a set of rules. That's all I'm saying.
That you're not telling us the truth. I don't appreciate addressing down in a meeting.
Oh, we can get one. Councillor Churchill?
Yes, Mayor Westby, it appears to me there's been, at least to say, a lot of elasticity used in this over a long period of time, and I think that's probably become culture, habit, whatever. However, the rules do apply to us, and we need to start to go back to those rules, not just on this issue, but specifically on this issue, and start to use those rules and regulations as they apply and where they apply. Now, if we want those rules changed, it's up to us, or it's up to the community to change those rules, and I'm fine with that. But if the regulation is there, if the rules are clear, which has been spelled out to us right now, then we need to comply with those rules. Thank you.
Okay, so no further... Deputy Mayor... Sorry, Deputy Mayor Woods, I was about to go.
No, thank you. I take on board all the comments that have made here tonight and about applying the rules. However, that being said, there's a comment in Councillor Simon's motion that has sort of piqued my thinking, and that is, please put yourself in the position of the developer and ask, would you be happy with council if they overturned your choice of name and then proceed to apply a name council thought may be more appropriate? My answer to that is no. I'm quoting here. The decision is not well received by the developer, and we as councillors want to be want to be responsible for that angst. Going forward, I will support this today, but going forward, I will apply the rules. The rules have been brought to our attention. It has just been rather, I feel, ad hoc over the years. Just been done. I mean, I take for instance, Murphy Court in Orford is named after a dog of the developer. Bennett Bridge at Orford, it's Spring Beach. Mrs. Bennett is still alive. No. Yes, she is. Yeah, she's still alive. No, she's just moved. So those people are still alive. So going forward, I believe that yes, the rules should apply. But with regards to this one, I will be in support of this motion. Thank you.
Okay. Can you summing up, Councillor Simons?
Yes, if I could. If no one else has any comments. I'd just like to say there's no question of your interpretation of the rules, Madam Mayor, or anyone's around this table. Councillor Churchill can interpret the rules as he likes. This motion isn't really about that. The motion is that we have jumped on this fairly quickly. I think we need to have some lead time for developers to understand that we are going to enforce the rules and that we are going to do what we consider is correct. There was a lot of confusion about the rules when this discussion was happening. As I said, you had your view of it, the planning officer had his view of it, the general manager had his view of it, and it was difficult to work out what the middle ground was. So I'm certainly not questioning your understanding of the nomenclature board or anyone else's around the table, but I think out of respect for the developer that this particular motion should be rescinded.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're going to be putting the motion that council overturns its decision 1119 made at its January 22nd 2009 meeting by absolute majority. So all those in favour of that motion: Councillor Simons, Councillor Arnold, Deputy Mayor Woods. Against: Councillor Churchill, Councillor Breeny, Councillor Browning, Councillor Pike and myself. It's 5. The motion is lost. So based on that, Councillor Simon, I assume the other two...
Yes, they're irrelevant.
Are irrelevant, and the fact is that council, under the rules, has 40 days from the time of the motion being passed to advise the nominative board of its decision, which goes back to the last council meeting. So now we've got like 10 days or whatever it is. Item 9, Councillor Brenny, are you leaving the room? Yeah, just in case there's a question. Okay, sorry, on page 212. For motion.
The recommendation we're talking about? Yeah. Okay. That council receives and notes the Swansea Courthouse Management Committee 2018 annual report to council.
Somebody to second that motion? Councillor Browning. Open for discussion.
If I may, I'm just wondering if anyone actually knows. Sorry. That's.
Oh, yes, I've got to bring your late item in.
So that will become, that'll become 9, 10, that'll become 10?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Just a question in regards to this. Does anyone know what the ECCAI is?
That would be the East Coast something. East Coast Community Arts Initiative. Yes.
Thank you.
I believe that's the acronym for it.
Thank you, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay. So, this is an opportunity, I think, for council to thank the people in the community for their hard work again.
Yeah.
All volunteers doing great work, and thank you. So we'll move the motion. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Simons, would you mind? Thank you. So, a little step up. We need to bring in the late agenda item late agenda. And so that'll be coming in at item, is it 10 or would it be 9.1 or something?
I consider we can go back to 8.3.
Okay, we'll go back to 8.3. Sorry, we're just going to reverse. So we're looking at the agenda item. So, Deputy Mayor Woods?
Yes, thank you. I'll move that council, I'll move these in separate motions. So number 1 is that council sends a formal letter to the Department of State Growth requesting the northern 80 km/h speed limit zone on the Tasman Highway Bicheno that is relocated 1 kilometre north in the interest of public safety.
Okay, somebody just second that motion? Councillor Simons. Open for discussion.
Madam Mayor, just coming from the area, that makes quite good sense. It's a pretty difficult corner at the Rosedale Road and the Tasman Highway, and to hold the 80 kilometres to just past the, it moves it to just north of the Bicheno Golf Club entrance would be a very good idea, I believe. It would add a fraction of time to people's journeys, but hardly at all. It's not an area you can speed through at 100 kilometres an hour anyway, so I don't see the reason why you wouldn't bring it back to 80, and then that would certainly help with Rosedale Road.
Okay. Councillor Brenny.
Why would State Growth reject the original application? Through the Mayor. Why did they give a reason for it?
Through you, Mayor, they look at a whole lot of vehicle statistics, accident statistics, and I think the main one is that there's no accidents there, so they don't consider it's a dangerous part of the road. So
yeah,
that's what they base it on.
From an engineering point of view, through the Mayor, speed is of course the issue, but like and to be brutal, traffic engineers look at the number of people who are injured before they do anything about a road. That's the fact. One of the situations with Great Eastern Drive is, and you can question the Department of State Growth on this, their speed limits are set with regard to tourists getting from A to B and reducing their travel time. It's a fact. That's been stated to me because of the roadworks that have been done on Cherry Tree Hill and the road, the passing lanes, etc., the widenings. They're not being done for the purpose of road safety, because where they're doing it, there's been no accidents. They're doing it for the sake of travel time between A and B. And that's the first thing to consider. The second thing to consider is, until there is accident statistics, previously Dyer and now State Growth don't do anything to roads until there is a statistic. And they won't change the situation with the road, speed, widenings, anything like that, until such time as their statistics say, this is number 1 on the list, we've got to do something about it. And it usually depends on how many people have been injured or how many vehicle accidents there are. When somebody is injured, seriously injured, they definitely take notice of it. But until that time, they'll still give you this answer as per standard AS 1742, Part 4 speed controls. And no matter how you beat your head against the wall, there are 490,000, to exaggerate, situations in Tasmania where there are far more important and dangerous sections of road that need this sort of work, that get the same answer, and eventually this may come to the top of the list. But until it does, I don't see any point in going back to State Growth and asking them to reconsider something that they just quote the standard on. However, I did notice that it says at the end of it, happy to discuss. I presume that that means that it's open to discussion. As far as the, well, we're dealing, I presume, with just number 1 at the moment. I'll support this, but I can say that in my experience, it'd be a waste of time.
Okay, Councillor Churchill?
I just wanted to make the comment that if this has come from the local community, I think we should treat it with the respect it deserves, and at least challenge state growth about it. And I'd hate to see it on record that we didn't do that and that someone was badly injured. I think and it seems that the local people up there should be best qualified to assess whether this is an issue or not. Just a comment.
Yeah. I've had some scary incidents there. Yeah, I've turned in there and there's somebody been behind me and I have had to stop quickly because somebody was turning in there. So the item 1, which is what we're looking at the moment, I would support that because I've seen it with my own eyes just how scary that area is. Councillor Brenny.
Can I just say, when the letter is drafted to go to Dyer, I think 2 points ought to be stressed. First thing is that the alignment of Rosedale Road into Tasman Highway and the alignment of Tasman Highway at that intersection, I think it curves, is that right? Right? And the angle of Rosedale Road is not necessarily at 90 degrees. That's 3 good reasons to put in your letter that this section of road is not necessarily safe. I wouldn't mention the Bicheno Golf Club.
Well, sorry, just moves us to that in context of where the sign would be. Yeah, that's a kilometre down the road.
I certainly would, in your approaches to state growth, emphasise the intersection alignment and the sight distance of Tasman Highway.
Okay, so I will put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Somebody to move.
So the second part of the motion is Council sends a formal letter to the Department of State Growth requesting the speed limit for the sealed section of Rosedale Road is reduced from 100 kilometres an hour to 80 kilometres an hour in the interest of public safety.
Somebody to second that? Councillor Simons. Open for discussion. Yes?
I was just wondering how long is the silt section of Rosedale Road? Please, can somebody help me?
Yeah, through the mayor, it's probably about 5 or 6 kilometres. Actually, it wouldn't be that. It would be less than 5. Yeah, probably between 4 and 5.
I'm not keen on this one at this very moment. I don't know, has there been any accidents in the area? Yeah, Mr Necker.
Through you, Mayor, I've got no idea. Councillor Simons is probably the person to ask on that.
Just from being local to that area, I know it's a steep piece of ground either side. There's low driveways on the bottom side of the road and there's high driveways on the top side. It's quite windy. The road isn't lined and there are a lot of tourists that go up there to the Aspley National Park, so it's quite heavily used, that road, and you could travel it at 100 kilometres an hour and that would not be a good thing. So I can't imagine someone trying to travel at 100, so I don't see why the speed limit wouldn't be at 80.
The thing is, on most of our roads in Tasmania, they've all got the sign up for 100, but I wouldn't really like to go around Paradise at that, or many areas that are signed 100. But you know, the thing is that this has come to us quickly, where there's been no opportunity to speak to other residents in the area to get their feedback on what they think about a reduction of a speed limit that's like 5 kilometres long, which is not a short distance, 5 kilometres, you know what I mean? That's not a short distance to adjust the speed limit. So I would actually like to have this one deferred to the next meeting. I don't know that it's this urgent. We don't know of any accidents. I'd actually like it deferred to give Council Laws some time to have a discussion with people in the area, more so than I think it was the one letter that we received for some people that wanted this to occur in the mail. Councillor Arnold?
Surely it's not about accidents, it's about mitigating risk, and it's about council taking responsibility for the public safety in the area. I don't see the problem in sending a letter to the Department of State Growth and highlighting that. I mean, I take on board all of Councillor Breeny's comments before and how they actually assess areas, which I think is very poor, to be perfectly honest, that there has to be an accident or a death or something there before they'll even consider it. Well, I'm sorry, from my perspective, it's the risk. It shouldn't have anything to do with an accident or death.
Can you tell us, Councillor Arnold, what is the level of risk there?
I think the problem we have in this state, right across this state right now, is that a lot of places, and you've highlighted Paradise as one of them, as it's signed as 100k, but those of us that know the area wouldn't drive through there at 100k, but the tourists do. So there is a degree of risk around that. Because it says 100k, they believe they can do it. The road may not be necessarily suitable for 100k, and I think we need to highlight that to State Growth.
Councillor Breeny?
With regard to responsibility and liability, I think we're treading on very thin ice when we even get involved in any way with speed limit setting. This is why State Growth probably treat it the way they do. They have a set of rules that they rigidly stick to. Because if we start thinking about, being notified that it's a dangerous area and then making rules as to what speed limits are applicable, we're starting to stick our noses into business that we really don't want to get involved in. This is a State Growth matter and ought to be treated that way. That's my opinion. My second comment to make on this section of the proposal is that 80 kilometre zones are specifically set up for specific reasons, sometimes short-term, lower speed areas where it's not a long distance, and approach distances, so slowing you down basically. I'm not sure that that State Growth would look at this either. They would reject it, I'm certain of it.
Councillor Churchill?
Yes, Mayor Wisby, to you and to the General Manager, just a question. Do police get involved in this sort of assessment? Does the local police officers have any say in this, or direction, or anything like that?
I wouldn't think so. This is just a formula used by, as Councillor Breeny said, it's a formula used by, Dyer or State Growth now.
Thank you.
If I'm correct.
That's correct.
Okay. Any further comment?
If everyone has finished, I'd like to sum up, if I may.
Certainly.
Thank you. I take on board what Councillor Breeny and yourself, Mayor, have said. However, we've received, you and I, this letter was addressed to the General Manager, Mr David Metcalf, Mayor Debbie Wisby, Jenny Woods, Deputy Mayor Woods, and Mike Simon, Councillor Mike Simon. Sorry. We received this on the 17th, and Mr Pollard, the Works Manager, promptly put the request to State Growth. They knocked it back. All this is doing, we're not getting involved in setting any limits at all. We are sending a letter to the Department of State Growth requesting, from Council, requesting a speed limit reduction. I did say in my motion that it was 80 kilometres. I need to rectify that to 60 kilometres, if I may. And I might just draw people's attention to the fact that the people that have put this request in live on Rosedale Road, and they did an assessment on the road themselves. I mean, they're not saying that they're experts at anything, but there's 18 driveways that occupy that road. There are driveways to properties with 2 sheds, and there's driveways to vacant land of 4. So all in up, there's 24 in that stretch of road. There's 24 driveways that you've got 100 people doing potentially doing 100 kilometres up your clacker going up there. So this is all this is actually only a letter sent to the department. It's up to them, of course. So that's all I'm asking for, is support to send a letter to State Growth to reduce. Could you change that, Miss Turvey, to 60 kilometres on the second one? So from 100 kilometres to 60 kilometres. Is that okay with the seconder?
Yes,
That I
that's
did
fine.
did admit that. I do apologise, but given that there's 24 driveways that come off that stretch of road, which is around about 5 kilometres, it's quite a reasonable request. It's a request from the community for safety concerns, and it's a letter to State Growth. That's basically it, and then it's up to them. So that's all it is. Thank you very much.
Okay, the motion, all those in favour? Councillor Churchill, Arnold, Breeny, Deputy Mayor Woods, Browning, Pike, Simons, against, myself, carried. Okay, motion tracking document, item 10. Any question or comment on that document? And there's, council receives and notes the information contained in the motion tracking document. Questions without notice. Do we have any questions without notice? Councillor Simons.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm not quite sure who this might be directed at, but you'll work that out. At our last meeting, we set in motion a process to engage consultants to review the four major projects within the municipality, being the Tribunna Wharf Marina, the Prosser Plains Raw Water Project, the Marina Views Tribunna and the Solace Development. I was wondering if we could have an update on that process, considering it was a 21-day process to engage the consultants.
Yeah, no, we haven't met yet on that.
Okay, so perhaps when information comes to hand that will be...
Of course, you always are, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Deputy Mayor Woods?
Thank you. I have a request that at a future workshop that we have on there discussions about submissions for motions to the local government AGM meeting in July. We've got that in, we've received that via email, and that all councillors are made aware of when the AGM is and what is on those that agenda. So that was just that
Yeah.
one.
So you're referring to how council wishes to vote in respect to those matters prior to the voting, ideally.
Yeah,
Yes.
prior to that though, we need whether there's any motions that this council want to put into that meeting.
Yes.
Or that agenda, sorry, and then after that's happened,
Yeah.
we are given the annual general meeting agenda to discuss on a way whether we are going to vote, because in previous years we haven't discussed what's going on in the annual general meeting agenda, and it's just we're only one vote anyway, but it's just a thing of courtesy to the councillors around the table that we discuss it and are informed.
Yes. You just reminded me of something else. I attended STCA, Southern Tasmania Council Association meeting, maybe a week ago on Monday. There was the discussion there going forward. So they was looking at whether or not that group remained as it is. So they did a bit of an analysis. So that's all the Southern, I think there's 12 councils that forms that group. I think we pay about $800 a year in membership fees.
It's not much, man.
Yeah, no, it's not much money. Well, it's not a lot of money. But in saying that, I'm not really sure what we sort of get out of that $800. But so basically, there's quite a few new mayors and a fair bit of new blood around the table, in the nicest way, blood around the table. But you know what I mean? Like they're pretty eager to review what happens and how it happens. So some councils weren't happy with the $14,000 a year they pay, because it depending on your size of your council. So basically, it was agreed that the councils would, and if you want to get out, you've got to give notice 3 months before the end of the financial year. But as we only pay like $800, I think it's still a beneficial thing to stay in. And I think, and they're going to no fee. I think it was no fee. Sorry, that was pretty hopeless of me. That's no fee for the next 12 months. There's enough money in the kitty from memory, so no fee for the next 12 months. So I think we go down from 800 to nothing. But it gives us an opportunity to look at the whole process and possibly look at rejigging it. So I think it's still a really worthwhile thing to be involved in, because it's not going to cost us anything, and we could benefit significantly from it. And I think the risk of not being in it is greater than being in it, if you know what I mean. Like, we do need to have that voice around the table, and it's one vote each. It's not dependent on how much money you put in. We're equal to the $14,000 payers. So I think that's outstanding that that's the case at the moment.
And it's free.
For next month, yeah, next year.
Can you remind me of the acronym again?
STCA. Okay.
I've got another question,
Yes.
if I may. It's just following on from Councillor Simon's request and comment with regards to the motions that this council set in motion last Monday on the 18th. Cost, the cost to those motions, where do we find the money from? And I'm not asking for an answer now. I'm asking for it to be addressed and reported to council with regards to how we're going to fund the consultants' fees and the lawyers' fee and all that. Where is that money going to come from? So that's just not a question to be answered now, but it's a question that's just put on notice.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any Councillor Simons?
I was just wondering, just one more question. I was wondering if you, Madam Mayor, could give us from my own personal context, some reasoning behind the appointment of an acting general manager from outside the organisation, and also in particular, are there financial consequences to the council as opposed to using an in-house acting general manager?
Right. So, as you are fully aware, Councillor Simons, the council voted that as mayor I could make that decision.
Yes, I understand.
And as you are also fully aware, I did make a call around in respect to the acting general manager and actually asked you for your opinion.
Yes. I was just wondering, I was just
Yep,
after some
understand.
reasoning,
Yeah, I'm answering
and I
it.
apologise
Yep.
for not understanding those reasons.
And there is a cost incurred. Of course, you need to pay somebody to come in to council to fill a job, but you know, in this very agenda, we look at the pressures applied to the planning department, and that's something that council considered. I think going back to the workshop was actually about the pressures of existing staff and the workload that they have, and whether or not, you know, employing somebody external was fairer to the internal staff. So that was all taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a workshop, like I think on the 8th of January workshop that we had here. That was a discussion point back then to appoint Kingborough Council employee, an external person at that point in the initial part of the discussion when the General Manager was going to go on leave. And we were advised at that meeting, at that workshop. So it's not a new item. It's been discussed. I'm not sure if you were at that workshop.
No, I wasn't on the 8th, so
Right.
yeah, it was an apology.
Yeah. So yeah, that was discussed with the 7 councillors that were here at that time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, no further questions. I declare the meeting closed at 7:17 p.m. And that's it. Thank you, everyone.